Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. This here's Portie's Garage. On today's episode, we're back on the Boxster project, and I had a little bit of an issue as I was getting prepared to work on this front corner. So if you come in here and check this out, I took the boot off, and to my surprise, the steering rack was bent. So I did get this off. Obviously that's really easy, but you can see the steering rack is bent. So needed to order one of those. It took about a week to get the steering rack in, and there it is. So thank you AZ Cycle Parts for that. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get started on taking out the steering rack. So there's a bolt up here, need to take out for the hoses, and then two underneath, and of course the tie rod on the other side. Don't have to worry about this side because the tie rod is already off. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, now we're over on the passenger side. I'm gonna try to take off this tie rod. So to do that, there's a star. You need to put a T40 star to kind of hold the tie rod from moving. Then it's an 18 millimeter. I've just cracked this loose and it is moving without the star. So I'm just gonna see if I can get lucky here and pull this out. Now that was really lucky. So let's see if we can get this out now. Seems like it's coming, but it doesn't want to come all the way. I don't know if I can get this on here or not. Maybe I can do that. No, that's not gonna push it though. Just can't get that in enough. Ta-da! All right, I'm gonna set this back in so I can get the wheels aligned to go straight. Because before we start taking off anything else, I need to make sure the steering wheel's straight. So when I put the new steering rack in, we're all set. Okay, now that we got the tie rod off on the passenger side, or at least loose anyway, I wanted to make sure to get the steering wheel straight. I'm gonna take off the nut for the supply lines. I hear they're a little difficult to get off, so I wanna make sure the steering rack's in place before I pull those two bolts out. So let's go in here and check this out. So this right here is the nut I wanna take off, or the screw for these two supply lines. Again, from what I've heard, this should come off pretty easy, but these two supply lines will be a little more difficult to pull out. And I want to make sure this is in place so I'm not pulling the rack as I'm pulling these off. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go, we got that. Now let's see how hard these are going to be to pull out. That was close to being in the face. All right, got those two free. Only a little bit of spillage. Now let's take off the two bolts. Okay, now that we got those hoses off, let's get these two bolts off. They're pretty easy. They're 15 millimeter. Shouldn't be too hard to do. One on this side. One on this side. Okay, now in theory we should be able to pull the rack through. So let's finish off taking off that tie rod. I just temporarily put it on there to keep everything straight. Let's make sure the steering wheel's straight, and then we'll try weaseling this steering rack out. Okay guys, one more thing, I almost forgot. Got to take off the nut for the steering rack here that goes inside. So let's hope this isn't too hard. Now we gotta try to separate it. Not too bad. Gotta go a little bit more. Just go nice and easy. Looks like I almost got it. There we go. All right. Now I did put a baggie over these lines here, so hopefully we should be able to just pull this rack right out. Get around this hose. There we go. Got her. All right, let's get ready to put the other one back in. Okay, as you can see, I have an assortment of bungees holding the steering wheel in place. It is a little cocked, but I know this is straight. So when I go to put it back in, I'll be set there. Now the next thing you want to look at on your steering racks, now I obviously don't have both tie rods on here, but you want to make sure you have them kind of set up the same. And it looks to me like if I get these two bolts lined up, these two are lined up right, so I'm going to assume this side is good. Now the other thing you need to be aware of is this steering rack piece or column piece is still in my car. I took off this bolt here and separated it right there. So this is what you get. Now a couple things. One, you see this little spline here? That's got to line up with that gap right there. Whoops, let me put my finger up there. So this little spline here has to line up with this space here as you put it back on. The other thing that I noticed as I was going through this, and I'm going to pull this up, you'll notice there's two little nubs here, right there and right there. And this piece was lined up on the outside nub. As you can see, it moves as you move the steering wheel. So I want to make sure that that's lined up when I put it in. As it is right now, I'm lined up. I just moved it a little bit. There you go. So I'm lined up there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take off this screw, pull this off, and I'm going to put all this back in, hopefully. And then I'm going to try to line this up so I'm good there, making sure, again, my steering wheel inside is all set. So let's go do it. Okay, let's get this steering rack in. But before we do that, found something I want to show you guys. So I thought this fitting was leaking, and I was looking at it and no leaks there. But then I noticed this huge crack. I don't know if you can see that crack right there with the mounting point. So good thing we did get a new rack, and we'll be putting that in. So yeah, something I didn't see. So always surprises, like a box of chocolates. So all right, let's get this, throw her in here, and see if we can get her back together. Wondering if it'd be easier to put the bolts back in before I put the spline back on. Problem is, it's hard to see under here. Get another light to try this. Okay guys, that was a little bit of a bee to get back together. What I ended up doing is I loosely put in the bolts for the steering racks to hold it in position, and then I was able to line everything up. You can kind of see my steering wheel move just a little bit, but I am lined up with that front little knob. So now what I'm gonna do is clean this up, get the hoses back on, and then I'll go around and tighten up the bottom nuts and put the tie rod nut back on the other side. So let's do that. Make sure these are clean. This would also be a good time to change the O-rings on here, but these look pretty solid, so I'm just gonna go with it for right now. As hard as they were to come out, I think we're good. But if we have leaks, we know where to go. Now, the other thing I'll say too is this bolt that goes into the steering rack up here to hold that in place, as well as the two mounting bolts, those are all torque to yield bolts, so you're supposed to replace them. I don't have new ones yet. I'll replace them later. So for right now, we're gonna get this just back in place so it doesn't fall apart. right, this side is a go. Okay, now that we got all the kind of bolts in, again, that front bolt for the steering column is 17 foot-pounds. I do need to replace that, so I just did it hand tight. I am gonna torque down these bottom ones until I get those new ones, just to make sure 48 foot-pounds in that. Let's do that real quick, and then we'll go around to the tie rod. All right, cool, let's go around to the other side. All right, let's get onto this tie rod end. Interesting thing, I was trying to put it on and there was this spacer on it, which is really odd. Don't know why that was on there, but had to pop that off. Either way, putting the nut back on, it's 37 foot-pounds. We'll see if we can use the torque wrench on it and see if this spins or not. Because when we took it off, it didn't spin at all, but this is a different tie rod. So let's try it out and see what happens. Getting close. All right, 37 foot-pounds. We will just do one of these just to make sure it's not moving. Yeah, easier said than done. All right, looks like it's not moving, so I think we should be good here. We've got everything tied up. I'm gonna go ahead and put the tire back on here so we can lower the car, at least on this side. Oh wait, there was one thing I forgot to mention. As I was underneath tightening everything up, I did notice the sway bar bushings. The sway bar actually shifted over a little bit. So I'm probably gonna have to replace those sway bar bushings. Obviously I don't have those right now, so we'll have to order those. But I am gonna loosen it up a little bit and pull the sway bar over just a little bit so it's more lined up evenly on both sides. So let's do that next. Okay, so if I'm looking at this sway bar here, it looks like it's been pulled over this way a little bit. You can see the bushing is out a little bit. So I'm gonna try to loosen these bolts a little bit on both sides and see if I can get this better aligned. I do have the drop link hooked up on the other side, obviously not on this side, so we'll see how this goes. Oop, tightening. That looks like it did it. This bushing here is shot. So let's go ahead and tighten these back up until we can get the new bushing. All right, let's get this wheel back on. There we go. All right, guys, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. Now, before we leave, I wanted to just throw out there, we need to put more power steering fluid in because obviously we lost a lot as we're going through all this. You use the Pedtosin CHF11S. I'll put a link in the description below. So next episode, we're gonna try to finish up this whole front corner so we can get this baby rolling. Stay tuned and we'll see you guys on the next one.